This week, a change of command. Lincoln switched out commanders in the East like they were nothing, from McDowell to McClellan to Pope to McClellan to Burnside to Hooker to Meade. But the West has remained mostly the same, with only General Buell being replaced by Rosecrans. This is changing. Rosecrans is out and Grant is in. But the switch up is far more complicated. Let's get into it. On the 16th, the Military Division of Mississippi was created, combined the Department of the Ohio under Ambrose Burnside, the Department of the Cumberland, led by William S. Rosecrans, and the Department of the Tennessee, led by Ulysses S. Grant. This means that all armies from the raging Mississippi to the Appalachian Mountains are now under one organization. The question is, who will assume command of it? Grant. The same day, we see Lincoln's growing frustration with the conduct of General Meade in a letter to his General-in-Chief.
If General Meade can't attack him, we, on a field no worse than equal for us, and will do so with all the skills and courage which he, his officers, and men possess. The honor will be his if he succeeds, and the blame may be mine if he fails.
Lincoln's offer here is pretty generous, giving Meade a free failure as long as he just does something. Meade responds that if an opportunity is given to attack Lee advantageously, he'll take it. The 17th, General Grant is ordered to Louisville, Kentucky, takes a route going through Indianapolis, where he meets with Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, who is also heading to Louisville, to deliver an order to Grant. Line on to the exchange now. With both parties present, 2 envelopes are given to Grant. One gives him command of the Military Division of the Mississippi, having Sherman take control of the Army of the Tennessee and keeping Rosecrans and Burnside in charge. The other removes Rosecrans. The second one is taken. Major General George Henry Thomas is to command the Army of the Cumberland. Lincoln, back in D.C., requests 300,000 more volunteers for the Federal Army. Good luck, President, but I think anyone who would volunteer has already done so. On the 18th, Grant takes over the command of the Military Division of the Mississippi, sends word to General Thomas that he must hold Chattanooga. He gets a response.
We will hold the town till we starve.
This is the answer old unconditional surrender was hoping for. Further south, we head towards a daring raid. On the 16th, the Union began a bombardment on Fort Brooke in Tampa, Florida. On the 18th, the Union sent 100 men forward to raid the Confederate harbor and burn their ships. The detachment of Federals successfully runs through the town, destroying numerous ships, including a steamer and a sloop. But then there's the problem of getting back. The rebels realize what's going on and are determined to make the raiders pay, having cavalry and infantry charge the raiders, inflicting some casualties as the 100 try desperately to board their dinghies. Only the Federal ship's support allowed them to return safely. In the penultimate thing on the 18th, God, this day is long, General Bragg bids farewell to his only ally, President Davis, as the Confederate Commander-in-Chief heads west on his grand tour to ensure his country will survive long enough for him to retire. Final thing on the 18th is the Battle of Charlestown. Not Charleston, Charlestown, in West Virginia. I know that name is confusing, but I assure you research on this was not easy. Union officer Benjamin L. Simpson is holding the town of Charlestown and must face off against the Brigadier General Robert.E.Lee sent General John Embden to take care of this Federal threat. Embden quickly overran the Union forward line and, while repulsed, decimated the men of Simpson, which around 8 times more casualties than he took. I don't know how many exactly. This technically makes a Union victory, but I see why people give it to the rebels with the imbalance of losses. That's about what I know of the battle. Seriously, that name doomed its research. Then for something a little bit more definite. Those have been withdrawing this week. Their back is against unfavorable terrain, so the Army of Northern Virginia has fled across the Rappahannock River, their usual defensive line. This takes time and leaves them open to assault from Union cavalry, especially General Judson Kilpatrick's cavalry division. On the back of his failure last week at Bristow Station, General Jeb Stuart decides to take a risk and remove the threat of Kilpatrick. He sends forward General Fitz-Aug-Lee's division to ambush the Northern Horse Riders. In a surprise assault of Custer's Wolverine cavalry, Lee charges through his force and has them scatter. After separating them from the rest of the division, the Confederate equestrians chased them for 5 miles and captured a good portion of their opponents. The Union suffered 260 casualties to Stuart's 30. General Jebb's success is praised as a great victory, one of the best had, while Custer called it
the most disastrous this division ever passed through.
On the 20th, the rebels complete their withdrawal, with Stuart moving his cavalry over the Rappahannock. Some say this Bristow Station campaign was nothing. The casualties are around the same, 1381 CSA to the USA's 1423. I disagree with this. The rebels lost ground to the Union. While the casualties are similar, only by including actions of Virginia that aren't from Meade, the Union can take these casualties while Lee can't. The Army of Northern Virginia took severe blows at Gettysburg, is without Longstreet, which is the only subordinate Lee can trust, is now being forced back. Bristow was a Union victory, not a big one, not a landslide one, but a victory nonetheless. Then there is an uncomfortable meeting. General Ulysses S. Grant meets with recently unemployed General William S. Rosecrans. I don't know much about
On the morning of the 21st, we took the train for the front, reaching Stevenson, Alabama. After dark, Rosecrans was there on his way north. Came into my car and we had a brief interview. She described very clearly the situation at Chattanooga. Made some excellent suggestions as to what should be done. My only wonder was that he had not carried them out.
I feel like something is missing from this meeting. Fine, it's animosity. Grant and Rosecrans have a rivalry. Last year, during the Battle of Iuka, Grant didn't assault when Rosecrans did. But it seems that was more anger from Rosecrans towards Grant. Still, from Sherman's memoirs, we learned that Grant didn't like him because of the battles of Iuka and Corinth. This meeting is between two rival generals, with one unemployed because of the actions of the other. I expected more vitriol between the two. Maybe that says more about me. To end this week, I would like to quote the Civil War years.
October 22, Thursday. In Tennessee, Grant slipped, and slid over the muddy roads leading over Walden's Ridge to Chattanooga. No Thomas awaited his arrival.
I just love the idea of the powerful general childishly moving in the mud. Then there is Sickles, who has a meeting with General Meade. Going into this meeting, Meade believes that Sickles has been lying and spreading defamation of himself and his conduct. There's just no such thing. There was nothing said in public by Sickles, and anything in private, Sickles keeps private. As for our dear Dan, he believes there to be nothing more than a conflict of personalities. Meade was reading the papers and saw calls for his replacement, and they're asking for that replacement to be Sickles. Sickles doesn't want anything more than his beloved corps, asking Meade to give him its command once more. Surprisingly, the issue of Sickles' salient was settled in both minds. Well, obviously, they're both military professionals, unlike the lying press. Sickles believed it to be nothing more than the besting done by incomplete orders. Meade also blamed it on vague orders. George Gordon argues that a West Point trained officer would do better than Sickles. The issue of Sickles' physical limitations brought up. But Sickles countered that his mere presence would bring enough morale to the Corps that a legless general would make sense. Meade then sharply and bluntly refuses the request, but signals that they could revisit the issue later. Meade states that Robert Ewell had to wait 10 months to return to command when he lost his leg. Sickles yields to Meade. His heart broken. That's where the week is, and there are only two things worth discussing. First, there's Lee's withdrawal. I explained why I thought it was a victory for Meade, but I'd also like to explain why it was such a defeat for the Army of Northern Virginia. Gettysburg ruined the illusion of Lee's invulnerability, and this campaign did nothing to repair it, instead cementing Meade as Lee's equal. Then there's Rosecrans' replacement by General George H. Thomas. I think the real change is not of the generals, but instead of the organization. There was a consolidation of power under General Grant. Henry Halleck held a similar position before he took over as General-in-Chief. With so many formations marching towards Chattanooga, I think we'll see a strong punch through the heartland of the rebellion and the end of Bragg. But that remains to be seen, hopefully, next week. Hi, it's the entire Civil Week by Week team here. With things changing from my set to my time, I'm thinking of changing up how I do the channel. I'm thinking of no longer sitting so far away from the camera, but instead right here, getting the emotion more quickly. It's just a thought coming around. I'm planning on trying it out, but I would just like to know what you guys think. I hope to see you next week.